So welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council, being held via the WebEx platform and streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we meet from today. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. So being an online meeting, as per usual, there does remain the risk of technical issues arising that are beyond our control. And if we do experience difficulties, we will adjourn and try to address them. And if the issue can't be resolved, we will, and the meeting cannot continue, we will let people know of the time and date as soon as possible. All of the submissions from members of the public will be heard at the start of the meeting. And additionally, voting on all motions will be under division, where the chair will call upon councillors individually in rotating alphabetical order to state their vote. Could everyone have their mute on, councillors, while we're... Sorry. I also remind all attendees that anyone participating in tonight's meeting must extend due courtesy and respect to council and the processes under which it operates, and must take direction from the chair whenever called on to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive or objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of council staff, or relate to a matter outside the powers of the council. So firstly, up on our agenda tonight, councillors, apologies. Do we have any apologies? No, I can't see everyone on my screen, so that will be a problem, but I'll work that out. Moving on, we have the minutes of the previous meetings. Councillors, the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 15th of September 2021 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? And if not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Let me just see who's talking in my screens. So we've got a mover, Councillor Sirikoff, and a seconder, Councillor Baxter. So I'm going to now put that motion under division and call upon each councillor for your vote. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford. For. Councillor Consolo.
For.
Councillor Martin.
In favour.
Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Sirikoff.
For.
The motion is carried. Next, we've got item 3, which is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? Peter Smith?
Mayor, I wish to declare a material conflict in confidential report 17.4. At the time that council considers that item, I'll leave the meeting, ask Claire Stevens, Executive Manager, People, Culture and Safety, to assume my chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I see something. Councillor Bond, do you have something to declare as well?
Yes, I have an interest in a confidential item that's on the agenda tonight, which I'll elaborate on and speak to once we go into confidential.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we're going to now move to public question time and submissions. We will now all hear all of the public questions and comments on report items from members of the public. All requests to speak were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. So get underway, and I just remind everyone of the rules of being respectful and speaking to matters that are relevant to council. Okay, so I am going to call firstly upon Alan Renshaw, who is submitting a question to council. Alan, are you there?
Through you, Mayor. Alan hasn't arrived in the meeting yet, if you'd like to move to the next speaker.
Okay, let's move on to Carolyn Hosking, who is speaking to item 7.1, the petition response, which is the request to remove Norfolk Island hibiscus trees on Park Street, South Melbourne. Carolyn, are you there?
Hello, councillors. Thank you for your time.
Could you just state your name and suburb first, and then please take your 3 minutes to speak?
Sure. Carolyn Hosking from South Melbourne.
Great.
Now, I just got your response. Thank you so much. And I was just reading through it thinking, is there a time frame that we could put into place to maybe start the process of, you know, the replacement of the Norfolk Island hibiscus trees in Park Street? It was sort of mentioned that over time there would be a change in these trees possibly. But if we can just give, I think this has been going on for many years, these requests. And being, you know, so well, we consider them quite difficult to live with. I know there are bigger problems in the world right now, but over the years, people have put in petitions and just haven't gone anywhere with it. And I think we're now sort of at the point that we're over 40 petitions in that little part of the street are so interested in what is happening. And if I can go back and let them know that there is some plan, maybe, within the year, within 2 years, if there's something that we can start letting people know that there will be a time frame that we can start replacing these trees. I see that they're no longer being planted in many, many councils, and as you've said that you've stopped planting them here as well. Clearly, I think if people haven't lived with them, they know how difficult it is. So it's just really an ongoing thing now that we have your response that, yes, you agree they're not ideal. We all know that. But if there's a time frame that we could start locking in to say, within the year, we're going to start removing a percentage of them and ongoing from there. So we at least have some sort of time frame. And also, with the nature strip, I mean, the part of the tree canopy is fine, but it's just all asphalt down that part of the street. And we're seeing so many lovely areas around Port Phillip Council that are now partly greening, partly nature stripping those very, very wide asphalt footpaths. And it's all just part of that program. We would love to see, that urbanised, greening of the community. So
Carolyn,
it's
you just
really
need to wrap up now because your time's almost up.
Yeah, it's really just a time if we can start getting, council to look at, okay, in the next year or 2 years, we will start this program just to let people see that it is actually going to go forward.
Great, thank you. A councillor may take up your questions when we get to that item. I believe Alan Renshaw is here. Alan, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Alan, if you could please state your name and suburb, and then you've got 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. All right, it's Alan Renshaw from Middle Park. Madam Chairman, local government authorities were established to provide the services and infrastructure required by most residents in a specific area of the country. Local government councils were established to approve the services and infrastructure to be delivered in the LGA and to raise the funds and oversee the expenditure required to deliver them. Councillors are elected to represent the requirements of most property and business owners and other residents in the council's wards they were elected and in the LGA at large. Unfortunately, in the city of Port Phillip, many, not all, of the elected councillors have failed to fulfil their obligations to most of the property and business owners and other residents in their wards and in the city at large. In the last 4 months, councillors have voted in favour of 1, increasing the rates on properties at a time when, due to COVID-19, many businesses have failed financially and many of their owners bankrupted. Many commercial rental properties stand empty and some will never be re-let. And many residents have lost their jobs and some will never be re-employed. And number 2, providing additional financial support to music venues and artists who are already supported by the state and federal governments and whose services are not required by most residents in the city. And 3, providing an additional childcare allowance to councillors whose position on the council is voluntary and who are paid $40,000 or $34,000 per annum allowance to cover attendance at council meetings. What is council's process and how has it been implemented to allow councillors to fund services and infrastructure that are not required by most residents, to spend ratepayers' funds on the pet projects of councils, which are not required by most residents, and to pay themselves allowances over those covered by the legislation when they volunteered to sit on the council as volunteers, not paid employees?
Alan, is there an actual question?
Council should start recognising that every dollar they spend over that raised by a service delivered by council is ratepayers' funds, not council's funds. Council should be focusing on how to reduce the cost of delivering the services and infrastructure required by most residents in the wards they represent and the city at large, not themselves, nor on the wants of special interest groups that do not represent most residents. Councillors should be looking for ways to reduce rates not increase them at a time when ratepayers are under a level of financial stress unequal since the Great Depression of 29-39?
I'm not sure there was actually a question there. CEO, do you have some kind of response given to that? I'm not sure if it's matters for council.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I think the main question, what is the process that supports council decisions? And Mr Renshaw pointed to a few council's decisions in his submission. Thank you for the question. The process is all of those expenditure decisions are made by council as a whole, and council as a whole represents the whole community through the democratic process of an election. So the decisions to fund different projects, the process there is obviously we work with council through the budget process, and at budget time we make the large decisions around expenditure, including the setting of rates, which council voted as a majority to set the rates this year at the cap level. Projects put forward by individual councillors are considered by council as a whole, and the decision is made, I believe, in the interest of the city and the community by the council as a whole. And allowances such as childcare allowances under the Local Government Act, council must set a childcare allowances policy, and they are entirely within their remit to set that policy as they see fit as a majority. And again, the process is that goes to a council meeting and the council as a whole vote on that. I hope that answers Mr Mitchell's question.
Thank you. We're moving on to Nicholas Mims speaking to item 7.2, which is a joint letter requesting attention and improvements for a more sustainable streetscape on Alma Road, St Kilda. Nicholas.
Thank you. Nick Mims from St Kilda. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Nick. If you've got 3 minutes to speak, so please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Crawford, councillors and CEO, many of whom responded to our joint letter, and a special mention to Councillor Baxter, who was already engaged in a mini tour of Alma Road. I value the opportunity to speak to the joint letter as stated, which was submitted by 8 co-signatories. On behalf of our group, we're all very attached to our suburb and neighbourhood, most particularly living on Alma Road, where some of us have been residents for approaching 25 years. The Port Phillip Heritage Review quotes as follows from 1913. Alma Road was one of the finest and most aristocratic of the thoroughfares of St Kilda, and the mansions which adorned it were almost unequal to fine architecture and beauty of situation. There is no doubt that a lot has happened over the past 100 years, with continued diversification of our population demographic and much developmental change, contributing to the rich socio-cultural and heritage fabric of our neighbourhood as we have come to know it. If you were to take a guided walk down our street today, observing the diversity of buildings and key elements on Alma Road, a picture, albeit fragmented, emerges, telling the story of these very changes over time. Alma Road is now proud in its claim as one of the busiest local thoroughfares, accommodating pedestrians, which include young people, families, the elderly, and disadvantaged, as well as bicycle and scooter traffic. It's a well-trodden path linking the glorious Alma Park with Chapel Street, the busy St Kilda Road Yarra Tram hub with its access to our city, and finally St Kilda West and the foreshore. We are all highly motivated community citizens, inviting the council to help reinvigorate, renew and recuperate our street, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists, in accordance with key sustainable livable principles, all of which are supported by the City of Port Phillip outlined in our joint letter. We've all witnessed similar considered council investment and enhancement in Alma Road East, notably at the Alma Park end, as well as in nearby Wellington Street, Mitford Street, likewise Carlisle Street and Fitzroy Street as well. In our joint letter, we've spoken to the City of Port Phillip's statutory strategies, which include streets designed for people, investment in walking and bike riding infrastructure, implementation of slow-speed local area, and finally sustainability with the implementation of street planting and ongoing investment in streetscape improvement. Rest assured, many people will continue to walk and ride this street, which now needs acute attention at its west end towards St Kilda Road, followed by investment and enhancement with continuous maintenance, which it most certainly deserves. I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Nick. Now calling on Rachel Eves speaking to item 7.3, which is the petition to access 2 beaches for dogs in Port Melbourne. Hi, Rachel.
Hi then. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
Of course. Rachel, before you get underway, could you just state your name and suburb, and then you've got 3 minutes.
Sure. Okay. My name is Rachel Eves, and I live in the Beacon Cove part of Port Melbourne. Okay.
Right.
Look, I instigated the petition that's going up tonight, and the focus of that petition is that many dog walkers in Port Melbourne can't access the beaches for around 5 months of the year, starting in 3 weeks' time in November. Basically, Port Phillip is cut in half at Kerford Road, with Middle Park down to St Kilda, with early morning and late evening access for dogs, and Port Melbourne, sort of north of Kerford Road, right up to Sandridge, it's very limited access. Obviously, there's a couple of dog beaches there, but I've got a beach in front of me at Beacon Cove, First Point, and I can't go onto that beach for 5 months. Look, the reason I submitted the petition is because I didn't think that the council was taking the feedback from the community through the animal management feedback process, through the DAMP report. And because a lot of us gave feedback on the DAMP report that we really did want access, but we were told by council officers that it was not being considered, and the reason it wasn't being considered was that there was a survey in 2018. The council commissioned Metropolis Research to undertake a survey of 600 residents, and it was a door-to-door survey. And the outcome of that was apparently in 2019 that people were happy. But the problem is I guess the Port Melbourne people, their legislation is oranges and Middle Park is apples. And then if you add that up together, it's like saying that all of us like apples and oranges. It's a very different environment depending on where you live in Port Phillip. Look, since that survey, since 2018, clearly a lot of things have changed. I mean, we're all working from home. I work for an ASX listed company, and I've been told I will work home for good now. During summer now, the paths are even more crowded than they used to be. And the beaches, very early in the morning, before 10, they're empty. This morning, beautiful sunny day, and the beach when I went out at First Point was empty at 8, and it was still empty at 9:30. So, look, things have changed a lot, but I also think that, and we've given a lot of feedback in Port Melbourne to the fact that we really would like access to the beaches in the morning. And so we would like council to consider that. But we really don't think it needs another survey. We've kind of been surveyed to death, really, given 1,600 of us replied to the DAMP survey.
Rachel, I will have to ask you to wrap up if you may.
Okay.
Please.
And look, the other point, which I'm sure others will bring up, is that there's just within that time, there's another 1,200 dogs that have been registered in the area as well. So
Thank you.
Things have changed a lot. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I'm calling on Brodie Mitchell, speaking to item 7.3, which is the petition for access to the beaches for dogs in Port Melbourne. Hi, Brodie.
Hi, everyone. Brodie Mitchell, Port Melbourne. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. I'm the founder of Port Phillip Pooches. We are an online community group of over 800 members who reside in this city. I started this group in 2020 to support our city's social inclusion and community cohesion through a passion shared by many across our city. I asked council to recognise that dog ownership and access to safe, leash-free areas is more than just about dogs. Dog ownership and our access to public space for dogs to use has played a vital role in the mental health and well-being and social inclusion for owners. We have limited public space in this city, and many recreation grounds are taken over by cricket and other sports in summer. There are very few people on the beaches in Port Melbourne in the morning, and yet they are left largely empty due to this social deprivation being imposed upon our community. It was evident earlier this year that community engagement around public space use was not adequately conducted nor considered when 50 or 60 of us would be standing around in the dark at 5:30 p.m. on Lagoon Reserve each night. It took for a number of councillors to come out and see for themselves before reasonable use of those lights was permitted. Community consultation around the use of public spaces needs to take place on location at the times in question, not left in the hands of those few sitting at home filling out surveys or randomly selected on the street. I would suggest go and see for yourselves how public space is being used and by whom and when. I urge Council to recognise and support what is one of very few community groups who have enhanced and sustained social inclusion and community cohesion through COVID. A community sector that has also been responsible for an increase in Bay Street retail and commerce in the worst days of our lockdown, whilst other businesses have sadly closed. We are just asking for reasonable access to public space at a time when few others are using it. I fully support this petition by Rachel and ask Council to also. Thank you.
Thank you, Brodie. Okay, so it's Sarah Mattinson also speaking to item 7.3, which is the petition for access to beaches for dogs in Port Melbourne. Hi, Sarah.
Through you, Mayor, Sarah hasn't yet arrived.
Okay.
If you'd like to get the next speaker.
Yeah, so the next speaker is Anne Landers, also speaking to the access to beaches for dogs in Port Melbourne. Anne.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can indeed. Hi.
Great. Hi, I'm Anne Landers. I've been living in Port Melbourne for about over 20 years now.
Fantastic.
And I am supporting having dogs on the beach in summer during off-peak times. And the reason for that is that, one, we all know there's been an explosion of pedestrian traffic, and that's due to not just locals but non-locals and joggers. And it becomes quite overwhelming when you head to the beach. And sometimes I've turned away and I've spoken to some of my neighbours and they've said the same thing because we all want to be safe. But I think that now that we know that there is a huge increase with dog owners and, that if we remove some of that pedestrian traffic, which would be allowing dog owners to access the beach before 10 a.m. when it's pretty much empty, then everyone would benefit from that, and it would encourage dog owners to head to the beach during off-peak time rather than during peak times. And the other thing I want to mention is that, I would be pretty unhappy if I went to the beach in an off-peak time with an empty beach and was fined for doing that because we haven't been given permission to take our dogs on the beach, when it's pretty much empty. When I was working, I'm not working now, but when I was working, I would have to track down all the way down to the dog beach during summer, and I didn't have enough time to do that. So my dog missed out, and I didn't finish at 5 o'clock. I finished at 7 p.m. So it wasn't, it's not much fun for dog owners most people are at home now, but we're doing that. So I think that, allowing dog owners on the beach has many benefits to our community. One would be, the reduction in foot traffic substantially, because we have a high number of dog owners. And also we'd keep pet owners happy too, because dogs have become companions. And as Brodie mentioned, they're keeping people sane. One of my elderly neighbours said to me she'd got a dog recently and she would have, in jest, she said to me, I would have slit my throat if I didn't have my dog, Timmy, with me. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say is times have changed. And with that change, COVID has brought about a higher number of foot traffic, a higher number of dog owners, and I think we need to change with it. That's pretty much all. I won't say any more because I know with time is the essence here. So yeah, that's my.
You were very succinct, Anne. Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers.
Okay. Calling now upon Kerry McKendrick, speaking to the same item, the access to beaches for dogs in Port Melbourne. Hi, Kerry.
Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and councillors and administrators of the City of Port Phillip. I'm Kerry McKendrick.
And your suburb?
I'm a fourth generation Port Melbourne resident. I was also the last councillor elected to the City of Port Melbourne. So I have deep knowledge and understanding of Port Melbourne, its requirements, how the population has changed. So not only have we had approximately a 20% increase of registered pets, not counting unregistered pets, we've also had a huge population increase in Port Melbourne of residents, humans, who are now also accessing our beach pathways. So, and I know this is not the first time this request has been put to council. I believe it's probably the last 10 years that people have been requesting similar access west of Kerford Road for the Port Melbourne Albert Park residents, to the same as south of Kerford Road for the Middle Park and Western Kilda residents, to allow our pets to be able to walk safely and healthily along those beach paths prior to 10:30 a.m. when there is no families on the beach. I've been walking these beaches my whole life, basically. And a couple of years ago, I took a snapshot of the beach south of Lagoon Pier every morning around 8 a.m. And each morning, the beach was basically empty. The only people on the beach were the dog walkers, who also collect the rubbish and the glass prior to swimmers arriving on the beach, and the old icebergers. And the iceberg swimmers, or the all year round swimmers, also bring their pets and leave them on the beach. So there is a whole community of beach walkers that actually clean the beach also. So they do this act for the humans that have left their rubbish the night before. Since your survey of recently, I believe there was about above 20% notation that people were requiring beach access. It wasn't a proposed question in the consultation, but it was neglected by your staff to actually ask the question later. So if you've got 20% of respondents in a random survey asking for access, why was it not noted or put forward to the community to further investigate? I believe the request is also not unreasonable, considering our COVID environment that we now work on. If you're walking, I'm not quite sure if anyone ever walks on the beach paths of a morning. So you have beach walkers, you have runners, you have parents with prams, you have cyclists also on the cycle path. There is no COVID safe environment for dog walkers, let alone for people and humans. So the population explosion of our area is just incredible. And also the visitors that come to our beach area now to swim most mornings. So it's also an increased health and welfare for the animals, because dogs do like swimming. And over the weekends, some access areas for dogs are taken up by organised sports, e.g. cricket, and also the Port Melbourne Yacht Club. So the Port Melbourne Yacht Club some days can take up nearly 40% of that designated beach area with all the boats, and also the beach bar now takes up space. So the restriction on the beach access in the Yacht Club beach is very limited.
Terry,
I do not understand why council is still not accepting the fact that the community's moved on. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
So I am supporting the petition.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service previously on the council.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on, we've got Sarah with us. So Sarah Mattinson, are you there also speaking to the access to the beaches for the dogs?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Sorry, I've just walked in the door from work, so I'm running a bit late, but I did hear that last one.
Well, welcome. Sarah, you need to state your name and suburb, and then you've got 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, well, I won't take up that much time. I'm Sarah Mattinson. I am from Port Melbourne, and I fully support this petition to exercise our dogs, particularly in the morning. We are dog lovers. I am a GP. And particularly in these COVID times when we're all apparently going to be allowed to demask soon, which fills me with dread, I would really fully support us all being able to spread out, dog walkers or otherwise, in the morning. We walk our dog every morning. There is never anyone on the beach apart from, said dog walkers or early morning swimmers. And the paths do get really congested. Kids with scooters. We had a dog clipped by a bike on the said walking path recently as well. And yeah, I agree. All of the local dog walkers are really, really respectful of the local environment. We pick up rubbish of humans and our dogs, of course, as well. Yeah, and fully supportive of this. And I think with the increased human and dog traffic in the area, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you very much. So, councillors, we have received further submissions to be read out on behalf of members of the public. And so I'll call out the name of each member of the public and refer to the Manager of Governance and Organisational Performance to read a summary of the submissions. So the first question tonight is from Trevor White. So, Kirsty Pearce.
Through you, Mayor, and the submission reads, whilst not all City of Port Phillip staff are classified as authorised workers by the DHHS, all local government staff are essential workers and have contact with the community, other staff and councillors. Will the City of Port Phillip make it compulsory for all staff to be COVID vaccinated like many employers, including the Bass Coast Shire?
So, Kylie Bennett.
Through you, Mayor, all staff who fit into the named occupation categories, for example, early learning and construction, or are approved authorised workers, will be required to provide their supervisor or line manager with evidence and information in relation to their COVID-19 vaccination status in order for this to be cited and recorded in line with the timeframes established by the state government. With respect to all other staff, they are currently being encouraged to provide vaccination or to be vaccinated, and in the next few days will be encouraged to provide vaccination evidence in order to assist with a planned return to office for non-authorised workers in line with easing of restrictions in November. We're currently working on a broader vaccination policy considering the safety of council's customers and staff, and as soon as that's developed we will communicate that broadly. In addition, Council has been working recently with representatives from local businesses, arts groups, sporting clubs, community groups, and some of our iconic destinations in the municipality to establish a promotional campaign to encourage vaccination within our community. This will be distributed through Council's communication channels in the coming days.
Thank you very much. The next question is also from Trevor White.
Through you, Mayor, the statement is in relation to the St Kilda Marina use of rental funds for approval by the Minister, and the statement reads, the list of proposed projects to be funded by the income generated from the new lease for the St Kilda Marina is welcome but raises many questions. My questions relate to the following. What is the priority of the listed projects, the estimated cost and the timing of each project? Why is the Council proposing infrastructure expenditure in the leased site? This infrastructure requirement should be in the lease at the expense of the tenant. Why is the Council proposing to fund the new tenant's additional berths and at what cost? Additional berths should be the responsibility of the tenant and part of the lease. Why is the City of Port Phillip funding the removal of contamination generated by the previous tenant over 50 years? Normally, the outgoing tenant pays for contamination generated by the tenant's operations. Given the service station now has another 10 years lease, will the City of Port Phillip also fund the decontamination of the site? Again, this is something that the tenant is usually responsible to fund. What are the existing tenants' contractual obligations for decontamination of the site, including the service station? What is the estimated cost of decontamination of the site? This was raised by the community panel and is yet to be answered. What funding has been allocated to the future construction of the pedestrian bridge across the boat accessible entrance to the marina connecting the foreshore promenade over to the new Beacon Peninsula? Is the Audit and Risk Committee comfortable with the City of Port Phillip expenditure on purchasing the non-compliant berths, the expenditure on the tenant's decontamination, and whether City of Port Phillip has applied all the income from the existing lease over the last 50 years, as outlined in Clause 6.2 of the St Kilda Land Act 1965, which states that the monies received by way of premium or rent in respect of any such lease shall be applied by the Council of the City of St Kilda towards the maintenance and improvement of so much of the land which is subject to the orders in Council referred to in this Act, and of which it is the Committee of Management, as is not leased under this Act or for such other purposes as the Minister in any particular case approves.
So a councillor may take up some of those questions posed at when we reach that item. All right, that was the last of the public question time and submissions. So, councillors, we are moving on to councillor question time. Councillors, do we have any question, or do you have any questions for the officers? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wanting to address the Norfolk Island hibiscus trees.
Just a moment, Councillor Sirikoff. I believe we'll ask that question when we get to that item. This is the time for separate questions. We can address the questions in regards to the petitions when we get to them, if that's okay.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yep.
Thanks.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Could council officers tell me what percentage of residents own a dog?
Is that a question we can respond to, officers, or should that be taken on notice?
Lisa Davis may help, but otherwise we'll take it on notice, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I don't have that figure with me right now. We'll take that one on notice. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. May I please have an update on the proposed tree planting as part of a petition response at Centenary Reserve in Port Melbourne, please?
Who are we going to for that one? Is that Lisa Davis?
Tony Keenan through you.
Tony
Mayor.
Keenan. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. Councillors, I'll have to take that on notice to provide specific details. I understand there is some planning happened, but there's some confusion among the officers. We're dealing with 2 requests about things happening down there. So I'll take that on notice and get back to you.
Great.
Thank you.
Do any other councillors have a question for the officers? No? If not, item 6 on our agenda is the sealing schedule, but we do not have any reports for sealing tonight. So let's move on to the petition and joint letters. And councillors, we have 2 petitions and 1 joint letter on our agenda tonight. So item 7.1 is the request to remove Norfolk Island hibiscus trees on Park Street, South Melbourne. So Councillor Sirikoff, please, could you ask your question?
I'm ready.
Great.
With regard to the Norfolk Island hibiscus trees, I'm just wondering, until good time when any of the trees are replaced, is it possible for council in the meantime to increase the cleaning of that area where these 24 trees are to reduce aggravation for the residents there?
Hey, are we going to Lachlan Johnson?
Through you, Mayor, I might ask Council's Coordinator of Park Services, Greg Mitchell, to provide an answer to Councillor Sirikoff's question.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, through you, Mayor. We could look at implementing some ad hoc cleaning of the site there. We might also speak to our street and beach cleaning to see if that can help with some of the cleaning along that street there for you.
So great, thank you. Councillors, do we have any more questions of the officers in regards to this item? I might ask a question if I may. If the question asked by Carolyn was around, is there a time frame when we might consider that of some of the tree changeover? Obviously, is that something that we could consider in the near future? It's probably not something we can answer now, but is that something we can consider? Do I go to Greg Mitchell again?
I might be able to answer that one. Through you, Mayor. So as stated in the officer response to the petition, Council is currently undertaking a review of the greening Port Phillip strategy. As part of that strategy, we are going to look at addressing what are quote-unquote nuisance trees across the city and see whether there are a potential replacement program can be developed. The timeline for the development of the strategy, it's due to come back to Council next year. As part of that, we will look at what an appropriate replacement planting program could look like. The second part of Carolyn Hosking's question was regarding the removal of asphalt areas, so to actually encourage more greening in urban space. This is actually already identified in the Greening Port Phillip strategy, and as part of the Greening Port Phillip program, we are removing sections of asphalt paths and concrete paths to actually provide additional green space and space for trees. Once again, as part of the review of the greening Port Phillip strategy, we will look at further opportunities to remove some of that paved area in the city.
Thank you, Lachlan. Any other councillors have a question for officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Martin to move. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Within a week of my first flyer hitting letterboxes letting people know I was running for council, I was contacted by people in Park Street concerned particularly about the seed pods and the damage they do to people's feet. I took myself down there and there's no way I'd be wearing flip-flops up and down there in the seed pod season. I certainly don't like to see healthy trees cut down willy-nilly. There needs to be a good reason. So I really like our council officer's recommendation here that if we can look at a timeline, I think these trees need to go, but they need to go in a way that allows us some time to make sure that they're adequately replaced. And over the next few years, hopefully we'll have far safer trees in Park Street.
Thank you. Councillor Copsey.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Consolo.
Yeah, thank you to the petitioners for raising this issue. I can see that you must be very bothered by it to go, to try to action it. And I'm sorry that tonight it's not necessarily being actioned, but I do strongly support a staggered replacement of the trees, especially if they're all the same age, making sure that these trees will be able to grow and be there instead of one day when they all would be past their prime. I was thinking about either voting against this or putting an amendment to get it, but I think that the officer's approach here and looking at it more holistically is the right way to go. So I really encourage that, or I will encourage in all our briefings on this topic to look at these trees because they are no longer in the planting palette and they are not suitable for the area, but we do need to keep green tree canopy and more green for our area. So I will support it tonight, but want to make sure that we do look at the staggered replacement.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin.
I've explained why I'm supporting the motion. I'd like to add one other thing. I welcome the council officer's comments that they'll look at what they can see what they can do to get rid of these seed pods in the seed pod dropping season in the interim while we do have these Norfolk Island hibiscus trees there. And hopefully once those trees have been replaced, there'll be no need for the extra cleaning.
Right, let's put that to the vote under division. Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey. Sorry, Councillor Copsey, you're...
For, sorry.
That's all right. Councillor Crawford, for. Councillor Consolo.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Sirikoff? Sorry, you're on mute.
For.
Councillor Baxter.
For.
The motion is carried unanimously. Let's move on to item 7.2, which is the joint letter requesting attention and improvements for a more sustainable streetscape on Alma Road, St Kilda. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers in regards to this item? Do we have any questions at this point? If not, do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation and a seconder, or for something different? Councillor Baxter to move. Councillor Pearl to second. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, first off, I'd like to thank the petitioners for making contact here. I did go during happier times and do a bit of a tour with quite a few locals, and I was struck by how much pride these people have in their street. Now, you often see that with little streets. People are very, very proud of their little streets and stuff like that. I don't think you see it very often with large thoroughfares like Alma Road, and I think that tells you that this area is something special. Really, the main priorities that that these people are looking for are around the traffic management, pedestrian safety, greening, and those sorts of things, and taking into account the big effect and impact that some pretty large developments have had in this area. And this isn't just sort of NIMBY-ish, we don't like large developments. It's more about how do we accommodate the fact that there are these big changes in this area. And I think that the petitioners have been really positive and forward-thinking about what they think they can achieve for, or what we all can achieve for this space, and I think that that's really good. So definitely thank you for that. I really want us to have a good look at this from a sort of precinct model. Obviously, the western end has been identified by the petitioners as needing a look at, but I think the entirety of Alma Road needs to be looked at through the lens of all of our strategies, including greening Port Phillip and some of the other really important work that we're doing, such as Inkerman Street Bike Path and all of that sort of stuff. So I want us to keep focusing on these sorts of things, and I want us to be able to come back to the community not too far in the future with some sort of improvements that we can say we can bring.
Councillor Pearl.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I briefly will speak. Look, I think there has been a lot of love given to various parts of the municipality, and part of the beauty of our streets and parks is why we all choose to live here in the foreshore. But I do think it's time to now look more broadly at the areas that perhaps need a bit more love than some of the other areas that have already received it. And I know that's an ongoing process and it changes over time, but thank you for bringing this petition and highlighting. I do know that road very well because I go to the gym there, but there has been so much construction. So now would be a good time, as some of it's coming to completion, to look at what's possible. But again, looking at all the areas across council where there is room for upgrades, improvements, enhancements, and as we say, open space outdoors is more important than ever coming through this pandemic. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter?
No, thank you. Probably have more to say when it comes back.
Yes, let's put that to the vote. Under division, Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford. 4. Councillor Consolo.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff.
4.
Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond. Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
The motion is carried unanimously. Okay, we're moving on to item 7.3, which is the petition for access to beaches for dogs in Port Melbourne. Do councillors have any questions for the officers in regards to this item? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. Is a trial for this summer possible? If not, when could people expect changes if this was to be supported tonight?
So we'll go to Lisa Davis.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. A trial would be subject to a council resolution to allow it to occur. However, under the Domestic Animals Act, council can change its order that applies to dog restrictions, but it must undertake the consultation on the specific change that it's planning to do before that change is made. So it would be difficult for us, given that summer is 4 weeks away, to undertake that consultation specifically on the change before this summer. However, we are considering all of the feedback that the petitioners and others have provided in the second phase of the DAMP consultation, and we will be bringing that to council consideration and also forward in the DAMP with possible responses to the feedback.
Councillor Pearl.
I'm wondering if the same level of consultation would be required if a trial was proposed.
Lisa Davis.
Through you, Mayor, this it's my understanding, and we have sought legal advice in the past on this, that level of consultation is required to change the order. However, I am happy to take on notice an action to seek further legal advice and provide an answer to councillors as soon as I can get that.
just a further one, a trial for say 3 months would be of interest to me. If you could take that on notice, please.
Through you, Mayor, I'm happy to take that on notice and come back.
Great. Any other questions for the officers? I might ask a follow-up question, if I may. How long is the consultation period? So even if would it be able to be implemented for half of summer? I don't know how long that period is that we're considering. Lisa Davis?
Through you, Mayor, to undertake a community consultation process typically takes at least 4 to 8 weeks by the time we have procured the market research expertise, designed the survey, undertaken the research, collated the analysis and reported back to Council. That's based on our examples of other projects as well as the dam.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I note in the officer's recommendations that that the DAMP is coming back to Council in November, which is a few weeks away. So I guess we'll get some of the feedback across the whole of the policy review. My question is, have we allowed access to beaches like this for dog walking at 10 o'clock in the morning on weekends anywhere else that's perhaps not a dog beach already?
Lisa Davis?
Through you, Mayor, Sky Animal Management Officer Sky is online. She's going to answer that question in relation to the restrictions on the various beaches because they are different on each beach.
Thanks,
Through
Sky.
you, Mayor, we don't have any changes, whether it's the weekend or weekdays, so it's standard across the board, no matter what day of the week.
Could I follow up with, I would have thought that on hot days you tend to see people on the beach a lot earlier on weekends than you would on a weekday. So I guess might be good to get some feedback, or maybe this is covered in the proposal that's coming in November, as to it might be more palatable on a weekday versus a weekend, potentially subject to beach use. And I don't know if that's ever surveyed by Council or things like that.
Is that Lisa or Sky?
Through you, Mayor, we'll take that on board, Councillor, and consider it as part of all of the feedback that we're considering, especially in relation to dogs on beaches. And there'll be a councillor briefing before the DAMP comes forward into the chamber in November.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Did I miss Councillor Sirikoff? Sorry, I think I missed Councillor Sirikoff.
Yeah, I was also thinking along the same lines of as we get into the warmer months of the year, obviously all the beaches will be heavily visited, especially coming out of COVID restrictions, and we'll be seeing so many more people on all of the beaches along the across Port Phillip. So I'm just wondering if it's might be more acceptable if we were to have Monday to Friday for residents, and but not on weekends when we see a lot more visitors from other suburbs. So would that be a possible acceptable situation if we do go ahead with a trial?
Lisa, will you take that on notice or take that under consideration?
For you, Mayor, I'll take that one under consideration.
Great. Okay, I'm just checking my little chat. There's no other questions. So Councillor Martin is going to move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Consolo. Councillor Martin.
Firstly, thank you to the petitioners for your petition, and I've met many of your dogs and I've patted several of them, so I'm familiar with your needs. I'm sure that the animal management people will require the wisdom of Solomon in the final documentation that goes into the DAMP, because while there are many, many people who, for very, very good reasons, would like to seek additional access to our beaches, and I fully support their wishes, there are also another small group of people, particularly in the Port Melbourne area, who are adamant that there shouldn't be any dogs on their beaches at all, and certainly not in the early morning. So I'm happy that our council officers are going to take this away, do some further investigation, perhaps come back with a recommendation for a trial, and exercise the wisdom of Solomon. So at the end of all this, I'm hoping that we'll have more access to beaches in the morning for our dogs, but perhaps we can also look at whether it's all of our beaches, whether we reserve at least some beaches to be dog free, so that those people who are dog phobic also have access to our beach. So commend our officers for their recommendation and wish them luck.
Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. Thank you to the joint letter submitters and speakers tonight. It's nice to kickstart this discussion. I've been asking for many times across this first year in council, and it's always come back to be part of the DAMP process, but it didn't really seem to be in there. So I'm hoping that this will be supported tonight so that we can have this discussion, because 2018 wasn't a long time ago, but COVID's happened and there are so many people working from home, so many more dogs, all the COVID puppies. And there are many people, especially in Port Melbourne, that are single, live by themselves, and a dog is part of their life. It's very much part of the, Port Melbourne has so many dogs, and all of the new retail around it shows that it's a very popular area. And so we need to be mindful of who actually lives up this end. And the flexibility is what people are after. I feel very strongly this warrants a review, and it's not just about a review about adding dogs in the morning or some asking about evening. We will get to what it actually entails, but having the review. I've also been approached by many saying they want a dog-free beach in winter or dogs on leash, because there's many months of the year that they feel uncomfortable on the beaches. And I actually have a child who's very afraid of dogs, and we've had to be really concerned going to the beach. So I know how people feel. So it's about making sure that our public space is looked at both ends, where more people in summer, because dogs actually have to be walked every day, it's not per season. So it's important for us to address this. And let's see, then. So we do have 2 dog beaches up in our area, but like stated in one of the callers, sometimes in summer now we're having a bar on the beach, and that takes up a lot of the space. And when the boats are rigging, coming in and out, that dog beach right there at the end of Bay Street is it's already small, and it gets smaller with this use. And the one in Sandridge is pretty far away from a lot of people. That's an end of town. There aren't that many people that live up close to that area. So although we have 2, it's not really close to everybody. I know we have a long process ahead of us if this is supported tonight, but it's good that it's been raised, and we can look at with the community, further community consultation about the different views, the pros and cons. Is it 9 a.m.? Is it 10 a.m.? Is it the evenings? And which beach would maybe be potential for a winter dog free or dog on leash? Things like that we still have conversations to be had, but I do hope that we can get on with it, because it is hard with summer, this change in the season coming in 3 weeks, but COVID's not gone away, and people who are very wanting to be able to stay away from people the footpaths are very crowded right now. So I think we need to utilize some of that beach space at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. The balance of the access to beaches for dog owners isn't right at the moment, and we had concerns about this when we did it in 2018, particularly around more to do with the Elwood end. But it is time to have a look at it based on exactly the things Councillor Consolo has gone through. There's been material changes in our environment and the ownership profile of dogs in our local area, and that review needs to take place. So I think this petition sends a pretty clear message to officers about what we want to see in the upcoming DAMP, which is a good thing. But animal infrastructure and dog infrastructure in particular in the city is under a great deal of pressure. You only have to look at Eastern Reserve at the moment, just have a look at the terrible condition that's in, just by sheer virtue of the fact it's just being completely overused by dog owners. So I think a wholesale review is appropriate. I don't think the balance is right at the moment, and we need to adjust it accordingly. So very much looking forward to the future reports coming through, and I'm hopeful we can engineer some form of trial in place without having to go through a full consultation process, not to circumvent a consultation, but to enhance the consultation with a small, short period of time where we can trial a solution and see if it works. I think that's the best form of consultation in some circumstances, and I particularly think this fits that mould. So very happy to support this motion here this evening, and hope my fellow councillors will also.
Thank you. Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So one of the issues that's constantly being brought up, presented to me, is that residents are concerned about are dogs under effective control by their owners. And so I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed so that everybody feels safe when they're on the beaches, whatever time of the day it is. And so I understand that in the current situation, the last 18 months, anybody who's bought a dog and registered their dog, that they really haven't had that opportunity to take their dog or their pet to an obedience school. And so we will have the situation with lots of dogs running around there who aren't under effective control. And I think this is one of the issues. If it was addressed, people would probably be more accepting of dogs on beaches, especially when they're off leash. So I'd like to encourage all dog owners to take that responsibility, so that so if we were to open beaches up to more dog owners, then they will feel safe, as one of the councillors has just mentioned. So I think this is a responsibility that that it needs to be addressed, and otherwise I wholly support this motion.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? No. Returning back to Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl, for pointing out things have changed an awful lot since the last review of where our dogs will roam. Definitely time to have another look. Thank you, Councillor Consolo, for pointing out that there are conflicting views on this. And as I had mentioned earlier, our officers are going to have to work very closely with our community to make sure we get this right. But one thing I think is very clear, we do need more access to our beaches with dogs. However, how we organise that and whether we need some dog-free beaches, well, I'll leave that to our officers and a consultation process. Commend the motion to you all.
Okay, let's put that motion under division to the vote. Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford. For. Councillor Consolo.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff.
For.
Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
The motion is carried unanimously. So that completes the 3 petitions and joint letters. So we're moving on to 8 to 14, which is our presentation of reports. So the first one is the 10.1, which is the St Kilda Marina use of rental funds for approval by the Minister. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers in regards to this report? Any questions? I might ask a question if I may. I'll take up some of the questions asked by Trevor White. In regards to, the kind of things we might fund using the rental money from the marina, is there a sort of a timeline when we might start to consider what might be funded and a kind of what's important and map that out? Or, but that is that something we're planning to do in the near future?
Through you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely, as part of the review of the 10-year financial plan, as part of this year's budget process, there's a range of emerging, currently not fully funded priorities coming through. Elwood Foreshore, for instance, there are some projects around the St Kilda foreshore as well, the missing link infrastructure from around Donovan's through to the skate park. There's also the South Melbourne market redevelopment, which is likely to require further funding than what's currently allocated in the 10-year financial outlook. And there's also a range of other capital projects in the area and surrounds that will be looking to be funded. So we'll be coming to councils trying to bring all those things together to look at a revised 10-year capital program alongside our enterprise asset management program. And that will give some sense of the kind of priorities that council may wish to invest some of these funds to, which would only be partial funding towards the total cost of the kind of things that we're looking at.
Thank you, Chris Carroll. Question from Councillor Clark.
Madam Mayor, my question relates to section 4.10, and I was just wondering whether council officers could advise if we're aware of the estimation of the contamination, estimation on the cost of the contamination or the scope, and if not, when would we understand the scale of the contamination that might potentially be there, please?
Is that Chris Carroll?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I'll get Joe McNeil to add, but there's been some extensive work from the team working in collaboration with the Australian Marine Development Corporation to look at site contamination, doing detailed studies as was agreed as part of the lease. We're still going through and finalising the overall assessment and what the costs might look like, but that will be coming to council in the near future. Joe, would you like to add to that, please?
Through you, Mayor, yes, just to add that part of the assessment of the contamination is how to manage the contamination. So the cost of contamination is in how you manage it, how you respond to what you find. So that is related to the redevelopment of the site and how contamination is managed through that redevelopment. So that will be all part of what is brought to councillors' briefing, the findings of the contamination and what does that mean for the costs and for the redevelopment.
Thank you. Any further questions? I might ask one further one on that was raised by Trevor White. Do we know under the contractual arrangement or existing contract with the petrol station around whether who would be responsible for decontaminating that site at the stage, obviously a while away, of no longer being a petrol station? Chris Carroll?
The short answer is yes, and it's the petrol station, but I'll ask Joe to elaborate.
Chris, the petrol station is required under their sub-lease, so the petrol station is a subtenant, and we have a lease with the head tenant. The subtenant, which is BP, is required to remediate the site when they leave, and that is a very strong clause in the lease, and we have the ability to enforce that.
Thank you. Councillor Sirikoff?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Can Council please clarify who is responsible for a question raised by Trevor White regarding the costing or who pays for the wet berths, I think he mentioned?
Chris Carroll?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. In the lease, there, as agreed, there's a range of, obviously the private berths or the commercial berths are all being paid for via Australian Marine Development Corporation. They're also including a range of public berthing throughout and other public facilities throughout the marina. We're not suggesting through what we've proposed tonight that we are going to fund any additional things, but we're saying council may wish to consider in the future to invest in some public elements over and above what's currently contained and required in the lease, which is fairly substantial. But as part of the leasing process, we did see some alternative options that may have had some more generous and better community outcomes, but they weren't able to be funded within the overall proposal. So it may be something as part of the design process that councillors consider they want to go a step further and would like to put some funding towards it. All we're trying to do at the moment is provide the capacity for that, and it would be over and above what's already in the lease, which is extensive in terms of the private berthage and the broader community investment that needs to be made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Bond, do you have an alternate recommendation?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor.
Can we get that up on the screen?
Which is the original, yeah, that's it there, just the original officer's recommendation with the addition of 3.2 notes that this will include the upgrade of the section of the Bay Trail between Brooks Jetty and St Kilda Skate Park in Marina Reserve.
Right. Do I have a seconder? We do with Councillor Martin. Okay, Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, so this is, I guess it's a bit of a nothing change to the original motion, because the original motion didn't exclude this, but it didn't actually call it out either. So I just wanted it to be included into this motion, just to ensure that it was clear to the community the sort of projects that are going to be funded by the rental from the marina. There's a whole list of items in the appendix that's attached to this report, and it includes things like potentially for a new bridge over the Elwood Canal, replacement bridges, and other bike lanes and other infrastructure in and around this area and across the foreshore of Port Phillip. So I thought it'd just be worth including this, just one small amendment, which is just a note. So it's a nothing amendment, doesn't change anything. Just to highlight that these are the sorts of projects that we'd be using the rental from the St Kilda Marina money for.
Councillor Martin.
And I thank Councillor Bond for his amendment. I agree with everything that he said. As someone who uses that section of the Bay Trail on an almost daily basis, if there's any section that needs an upgrade, I'd love to see it upgraded ASAP, even if, well, I'd like it upgraded yesterday, but it's really good that it's there in the motion so that we know at least one of the things that are going to happen. And hopefully we're going to see lots more great things happen as the monies come through. And it won't just be this section of the Bay Trail, but lots of other things will happen as a result of the whole motion going through. Happy to support the amendment.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Would you like to close, Councillor Bond?
Just to add one more thing, this project is already on our list of projects that need to be done in that particular area, so it's not creating a new project. As Councillor Martin said, it's something that needs to be done. It was on our list. I don't think we quite had enough money in our budget last year to fund it, but once this lease kicks in, it may provide us with the opportunity to do that at the current expected timeframe, or bring it forward if that's possible. But that's just highlighting that this is a project of need, and a project that the rental from the St Kilda Marina can and I guess will at some point in time in the future fund.
Let's put that to the vote. Councillor Crawford, for. Councillor Consolo.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff.
For.
Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
The motion is carried unanimously. Moving on to 12.1, which is the Key Arts Organisations funding, guidelines and criteria for endorsement. Councillors, we have a report from officers. Do you have any questions for them? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I see, when we spoke about this previously, extending the funding, I was thinking maybe we should look at not just 6 up to 30,000, a little bit more flexible with more. But I see in the criteria it's up to 6 organizations and up to $30,000. So was that reviewed just to look at if it could be more organizations, or is this seen as the most effective way to support?
Lauren Bilkower.
Through you, Mayor, feedback from the organisations currently funded and others in the sector is that anything less than $30,000 isn't a meaningful amount for operations or for major projects. We also do have the smaller grant streams available, so the new festivals and events stream in the Cultural Development Fund of up to $12,000 and the Cultural Development Fund. Should the independent panel wish to make a recommendation, depending on the quality of applications, that a larger or lesser number of organisations were considered, then that's something the council could consider at that stage.
Any other questions for officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation? Do I have a mover for this or something different? Don't be shy. Councillor Copsey to move, and I'm happy to second. Councillor Copsey.
I'll reserve, Mayor.
So that's me. I'm really excited to see the guidelines come back to us. I know how important this funding has been for a lot of our local organisations in this last year or 2 years of COVID. And I think a fine tuning of all the criteria and getting it ready for application again. I'm excited in that it's the next step where people can apply. Unfortunately, this is a sector that is not going to open up easily at 80% of vaccinations, but everyone in the community should get vaccinated out there. But it's not going to be easily, it's not going to be bouncing right back to where it was 2 years ago. So I think this is a really important step forward in providing support for the key industries that drive our local economy. So I'm very happy to support this tonight. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey.
Thank you, Mayor. You pretty much said it all. This is crucial funding to support a much valued and incredibly valuable sector of our community and our local economy. Our local arts scene is beloved, and for very good reason. Such a core part of what makes Port Phillip is our creative community. I was really pleased that we were able to have such a strong debate about this, and that we were able to continue the key organisation funding through the budget process. It's great to actually now see it getting to a point where we can start getting it out into the organisations where it will do so much to help a scene that has struggled really valiantly through a very difficult period through COVID. And as you say, Mayor Crawford is not out of the woods yet. So I'm really pleased to see this happening, and cannot wait for the very strong range of applications that I'm sure will eventuate, because we have such a wealth of talent in our local arts community. Very happy to support the motion.
Let's put that to the vote. Councillor Consolo.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff.
For.
Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford. For. The motion is carried unanimously. Next item is 13.1, which is 12 Little Tribes Street, South Melbourne, and 12 to 14 Duke Street, St Kilda, removal of land from the road register. Councillors, do we have any questions for officers in regards to this item? If we don't have any questions, do I have a mover for this? Councillor Pearl to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey. Councillor Pearl.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Copsey.
I would just say these are parcels of land that are enclosed and are no longer required for public highway usage. So that's the reason that these are being removed from the road register tonight.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl, did you want to close? No.
No, thank you.
Let's put that to the vote. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour. In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff.
For.
Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford. For. Oh, that's me. Councillor Consolo.
For.
Sometimes I get carried away. The motion is carried unanimously. All right, 13.2 is the records of the informal meetings of council. Officers are here to answer any questions we have in regards to this item. Are there any? No, but we have a mover from Councillor Pearl. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Pearl? No.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sirikoff, do you want to speak to this?
No, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. I'm assuming Councillor Pearl, you won't want to close. Let's put that to the vote. Councillor Pearl, your first cab off the rank.
In favour.
Councillor Sirikoff.
For.
Great. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford. For. Councillor Consolo.
In favour.
Councillor Martin.
For.
The motion is carried unanimously. Item 14 is notices of motion, but we do not have any for tonight's agenda. 15 is reports by councillor delegates. Do we have any reports, councillors? All quiet on the Western Front. Okay, let's move on to urgent business. Councillors, do you have any items of urgent business? There being none, we're moving on to 17, which is confidential matters. So councillors, it's been a short meeting, but we do have a few items in the confidential category. There are 4 items. 17.1, which is the reappointment of external member to the Audit and Risk Committee. 17.2, the panel recommendation for 39 to 47 Camden Street, Balaclava. 17.3, which is Fisherman's Bend, the Montague Precinct Implementation Plan, and 17.4, a CEO employment matters. I now call on a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public to consider these confidential items. Councillor Pearl and then Councillor Consolo to second. So I will now put the motion under division. Councillor Sirikoff. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford. For. Councillor Consolo. Councillor Consolo.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
And that motion is carried. So councillors, we will now conclude the open part of this meeting in WebEx and we will move to Microsoft Teams to consider the confidential items. So thanks to everyone who came tonight and is listening in at home. I'd like to advise the members of the public that there are now no further open items to be discussed. So this is the conclusion of the public meeting. And as again, thank you for joining us tonight.